Hey everybody, welcome. Friday. Welcome and thank you so much for spending it with the ladies of all things new.
Absolutely.
Remember one thing, I'll share it.
Hey, dear. Oh, let me share it, guys, right quick. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Yes, right. I'll share. Please. This discussion is going to be something you want to be a part of.
Really?
So good.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here we go.
All of our discussions have been really, really good and relevant, and today is not going to be any exception. We are absolutely going to have a great conversation. So do me a favor, do us a favor. Go ahead and share. Let's let the people know that we're on. Listen, you probably noticed as the ladies are sharing, I'm here with my girls, Dana and Teresa. You probably know everyone. We are one short today, so our prayers are with Joya. She's taking care of some family business. She had a family member who passed away, so we want to make sure that we pray for her. She's definitely not here in our presence, but she's here in our hearts.
Yes.
And before we get started, we also want to make sure that we thank the founder and the visionary of YLC TV, where we have a great opportunity to have this platform. Can we give a shout out to Mark Moore Jr.?
Yay!
Thank you, sir, for this platform, this opportunity. All right, girls, so let's get into it.
It's going to be good today.
It's going to be good today. And it's going to be, I don't think controversial is the word, but I think there's going to be lots of different issues that we can talk about. So we know this devilish COVID-19.
It's devilish for sure. It's sure enough, it's devilish.
Girl, it's devilish. It's still upon us. It's, cases are growing. I think I saw this morning, we have 4 million cases.
Really? In the United States or in the world?
In the United States to date.
No way.
4 million.
Wow. Honestly, I've turned my news off. Like I had to stop watching the news. Like I can't digest anymore. I can't take any more devastation.
I know. Because you're thinking you're going to watch it and you're going to see, the numbers going down. And I'm sure in some places it's neutralized. But as a country, it's gone up. Hot spots.
All the hot spots are just making it unbelievable.
Right. Where we are in Georgia, the numbers are up. So we're talking about schools reopening. We know that it's around time for schools to get started. That's one of the big topics right now. Yeah. Should our kids go back to school? And I guess I would just open it up by generally asking what your general thoughts are, and then we'll kind of get into the nitty-gritty of it. But what do you think? Should we open? Should we not?
I thought there was a good idea for one of our counties. They were going to do, you can elect to have your kids go to in class or let them stay at home and do online teaching. But I just think, and I thought that was a great option. So they can there are some, special needs kids or those who are more challenged where they need the sit down teacher in front of them. I'm one of those learners. Like I could never go to college online. I need to be in front of a professor. I needed to take copious notes. Like I needed to, have that in-person one-on-one. And so I just don't know how I guess parents who have children who need that one-on-one, even if they're at home or in the home, working from home, they're not a teacher. I don't think they can deliver the same information in a way that our kids get it because that's not their profession.
Yep. Right. Well, first of all, let me start by saying, Teresa, you look cute. You look like a professor today.
I look like a school marm. Thank you.
That's right up my alley. I love it. I think
thank you. Feel real churchy. Feeling real churchy with my church blouse on.
Well, it's so funny you would say that you didn't like online learning. I actually did like online learning, but I think even as a kid, I would probably be fed up with it. Like, I loved it as an adult because I had work full time. I had ministry stuff going on, so it worked well for my schedule. But for kids who the majority of their day is usually spent at school, they spend 6 to 7 hours at school. Some of them attend after school programs. They have sporting things that they're used to. So for now, their education and all of that stuff to come to an end, I can only imagine that the kids are going to go stir crazy, let alone what the parents are going to have to go through. And of course, that changes with the ages of your kids. If you have older kids, it might work out well for you. But if you have, younger kids, 13 and under, who it's already hard to keep them on task. It's already hard to get them to do the homework when they have a teacher who's consistently on them or with them. So I feel bad for all of you people who have kids at home.
I know it's tough. And then I want to make the point that I was going to make. Two things. We ask that you tag educators and parents because we want to hear from you today, right? We're not here with a specific thing that we're going to say. We're going to bring our opinions, but we want to hear what your thoughts are. All right. So share, tag, get some teachers and some parents on here. Let's have this discussion. So, and the other thing is we've got 39 people watching already and we're like 5 minutes into it. We want to up those numbers. So if you all can help us share to every page that you can, we want to get this conversation going. So it sounds like you all are in favor of the kids going to school. Is that right? Or not necessarily?
This is my concern because, a lot of times people will think that this doesn't concern them because they don't have kids. But, the reality of this COVID-19 situation is that you don't know who's affected or how they're affected. You could very well test positive for COVID and never have any symptoms, but because you're around certain people who might be susceptible and who may not recover, we know that there are people who have gotten it and recovered, but then we also know people who have gotten it and passed away like 2 weeks after their birthday, at 30 years old. So when you look at this situation, it can't just be something that we only care about because, we think it affects us directly. Like we have to look at the impact that it's going to have with all of the members of your family, whether you have children or not. So I actually, for the safety of, or just trying to get this thing contained or just trying to, make sure that we know as much as we need to know or whatever, just for the precaution side of it, I would want people to keep their kids at home.
Okay. Teresa, were you saying the same thing or do you still?
Well, I like the option if there were ways to make a classroom that normally seats 22 kids seat 5 or 6, for those parents who have to work and they can't be in the home with their kids. Like I know there was a case in Michigan that I heard about where a father literally dropped his child off at daycare and they had someone in the house had COVID because he didn't have anybody to watch him. Like he was like, I have to drop my kid off because I have to go to work. And it's just it makes me nervous to think that kids are there that are not protected, but I don't know. I don't know.
So this is Rocky. This is Teresa's sister, Rocky. She said teaching children at home are struggling to teach their students and their children. Absolutely.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Teachers. I never thought about that because teachers got to have some place to send their kids to.
I remember spring the Sean's teachers talking about that. Like you could hear her kids in the background trying to get there while she was teaching Deshaun. So I understand that. I was going to say this, and then we'll get a couple of other comments. I think I put this on social media. Like I waited until the very last minute. I talked to Lawrence. I talked to God. I talked to God. I talked to Lawrence. I need to get, just double impact. Like what should we do? And Lawrence is probably going to be back in the office at some point. I'm going to be the one home. And there are a whole host of reasons why I needed to be sure of what I'm supposed to do. Well, by the time I made my decision, Henry County decided where we live that it was going to all go virtual. Now we had made the decision not to send the kids back, even though they want to go back for the reasons that you guys talked about. Like I didn't love virtual learning. I can do it. We're going to do it, but it was tough.
Yeah.
But I just didn't want to impact the teachers that they would be with. And guess what? Cases are rising among kids too.
Yeah. They are. Yeah.
Kids don't wash their hands. Kids don't social distance. They want to hang out with each other.
and they touch and they do this, that's why it's like, I think, remember at the onset of the virus, before we even really knew a lot about it, the first places that were shutting down were schools, because they're like, these kids, they're going to touch each other. And we didn't know how it spread at that point.
Yep.
And it's just a big deal for children because they're germy and they touch stuff and they don't even have the cognitive thought to say this is, unsanitary. It's especially like grade school kids.
Oh, that's a wrap.
Yeah.
So this is what I was going to ask you all. So I have a host of questions. If y'all have got questions, post them and then we can interact with our audience as well.
Okay. Here's a good one too.
So Veronica said, we'll take this one. My 10-year-old is dyslexic and dysgraphic. I'd love to keep him home, but I'm not capable of giving him the services.
Wow.
So what do we do with children who have special needs? That's a challenge.
Yeah. And, Danielle, my daughter, she actually works with special needs children as well. And I remember her saying that, their services were cut back because, they couldn't interact with the kids properly, or they finally came to some agreement for how to properly sanitize and try to protect both her and the children. And, virtual learning just does not work for these children. And
they need that insight, that touch, and they need special one-on-one sometimes.
And they need the consistency, because she noticed that when she was able to start seeing them in person again, and now California's been shut down again, but there was a lot of stuff that she had to go over again because she had missed those weeks and those months without being able to be consistent with them. And that's one of the things our children need, just for learning in general. They need that consistency. They need that repetitive person, that they need that constant contact with that one person that they're used to.
Have you all seen that? I've seen pop-ups of either teachers or other folks who are kind of creating, I don't know if it's a side hustle, I don't know if they're able to get paid from it, where they're taking smaller numbers of people and giving specialized services. Would you guys be in favor of something like that?
Like a pop-up for school?
So people in my neighborhood, how that neighborhood app, they are advertising and saying for people.
I'll teach your kid.
From I'll make sure that they get online. I'll make sure they listen to their teacher. Is that a legitimate way to have needs met?
That may be. I think my only concern would be, so one of the things that I was thinking about doing, because, I host singles retreats, and I thought about how could I still keep the intimate group of things that I wanted to do. And I thought if everybody tested, got tested and at least tested negative, and that was a constant group that I knew we were just going to be in contact with, that might be okay. So that I know, because I wouldn't want to be responsible for being the person who brought this group together and someone in that group got sick. I wouldn't want that liability just as a person, but then even with the legal ramifications of it, I just wouldn't want that responsibility. So I guess if, people were willing to do that and, submit to a test and share those results and create that safe kind of environment, that may be a solution for some people.
But do you know how many sexual predators live in neighborhoods? When I looked up, there's Megan's Law. Please, somebody go to meganslaw.com and see how many, and put your address in and see how many sexual predators live in your neighborhood. It's devastating. It's devastating. They have their pictures, names, addresses, phone numbers, everything. And so after I did that when I lived in California, and I don't even know why I did it. It was just weird that I even looked it up. And I lived within a block of an elementary school. And so I reported the guy. I was like, did you guys know? He shouldn't live here. Right. And it's just to subject them to, we're already trusting them in the hands of our teachers who are certified, and, and we've had issues in school, but in somebody's house, like a Uber, Instacart, get some teaching from somebody, I don't know. Yeah, you can bring my food in a bag that's taped up and stapled, but you can't teach my children.
You can't teach my kids. Well, I think to that point, I can see merit in it if, number one, there's some liability issues resolved, right? I don't know
Yeah.
what it would look like. And two, that we could do background checks and certification in the way they would do if they were teaching at the school.
Yeah.
I do think you're right. Those are extra steps, though, that we would have to take to make sure that our kids would be safe and all of that. So I think those are things to think about. Now, this is the other thing. I have a girlfriend in Indiana, and they're sending their kids back to school. Indiana, interestingly enough, has not shut down in the same way as other states have, but this is what they're doing. They're starting off first 9 weeks, and then in November, they're going to combine their fall break and their winter break. So they're going to be out much of November and December when it's usually flu season, which we know is. So I thought, and some of it will be virtual, but a lot of it will be at home. I thought that was smart. What do y'all think about that?
Yeah. I kind of like the idea of like a hybrid, you know, like person kind of virtual thing. But I think this whole COVID situation is causing us to be creative and forcing us to think outside of, you know, what we have traditionally done for school, for education, for everything. It's one of those hard decisions that people are going to have to make personally, you know.
Yeah.
How
There's
for their family.
Pastor Travis has a great suggestion. I'm going to put it up for a second because it'll probably cover half of the screen. But it says he thought about opening his church for a virtual village for middle school kids to provide affordable meals and safe spaces for their parents to take their kids for virtual learning. That would be nice to drop them off and then they plug into, and then you have somebody that's not your mom over your shoulder saying, hey, are you paying attention? You know, or because, you know, our kids can tell us anything. And it's just like, yes, mom, I'm doing it. And you come around the screen and they're playing. I don't know what they play nowadays, but it's like, I think it would be advantageous for our communities to come together in that sense.
Yeah.
But then you still risk that we don't even know all of the parameters of this illness. Like now it's airborne. I don't say it's in the air for 30 minutes. And I went to the grocery store the other day, and at my grocery store, you can't come in without a mask. And of course there was this lady there, and she was cutting up, and she was like, this is against my rights. I should be able to shop anywhere I want. And they were like, no shoes, no shirt, no mask, no service. Like, don't even try it. And so, but it was so odd because I was thinking, you know, we all have our mask on, and in my store was a Starbucks. So I went and got Starbucks, and I walked around the store and I had to lift my mask and drink it. And I was like, oh, and then somebody coughed, and I was doing this, like, I don't know if it's still in the air. And it's too much to think about. It's a lot. I don't think it'll be safe for kids because they're so germy, like in the touching and stuff. Like, I think that if one teacher was sick or if one kid lived in the house with somebody, they were asymptomatic and they brought it, I think it has spread like wildfire. Even throughout our churches, I think.
I agree. So this is what I was going to ask you all, though, or then related to that. What's the role of faith? What's the role of faith in deciding whether or not to take your kid or let your kids go? And this is the reason.
Pick me. First, I'm gonna ask a clarifying question. Now, Paul was a physician, right? Before I go into my big old standing on a rock spiel. So when I grew up back in the day, there were some churches that they weren't allowed to go to the doctor, or they just didn't believe. Their faith was at the level where they were like, we're not going to the doctor. They could be sick, and they would take them to the church and they would get healed. And to the point where people in the neighborhood, if they fail and hurt themselves, they take them to the church before they took them to the 911 emergency. And so with that, I said that to say, you know, you have faith, but then God has given people the wherewithal, the mindset to learn and understand that, you know, to practice medicine, you know. And I don't know that, I mean, there was a bomb in Gilead. Jesus was a bomb, but when Jesus wasn't there, there was an actual bomb in Gilead. And so I believe because you mirror or marry your faith with practical sense. Like, it's almost like being prudent. Like, you know, what was the scripture we were using at the beginning of the pandemic? Like, God will give you, he's not giving us a spirit of fear, but of a sound mind. Like, now, if I have something that NyQuil is not going to cure, or, you know, like some over-the-counter medicine, like I have horrible sinuses, when my allergies kick in. So I have prescribed sinus medicine because I know that nothing I take that's over the counter is going to, at least alleviate some of my issues and speed me on. So with that being said, while I have faith and I know God is a healer and he heals all the time, I have faith for me, but I don't have faith for you or whoever else. Like you might come infiltrate me with whatever it is that you have. Right. With faith come wisdom. And I think that you can have faith for yourself, but you can't have faith for everybody else. And then you walk into, it's like you're tempting the Lord. And I saw somebody the other day, and it was Kev on stage posted it, but it was a lady that was, I don't know if she was praying but she was mad that people were wearing masks and stuff. And she was like, "Where the Holy Ghost?" Like she was so angry about it. But I'm like, but where is wisdom? Like still practice good. It's like knowing, so there's a chance that you can be in a car accident. So we wear seatbelts. It's a safety measure. So I think masks are safety measures. I think, stay at home, shelter in place is a safety measure. You know what I mean?
I agree with that 100%. And I'll push back a little bit just to play angel's advocate because I don't play nobody's devil.
I know that's right. I don't play with devil. I don't play with devil at all.
But I agree 100%. I understand 100% what you're saying. But I guess the thing that it made me think about is at this point, we're learning so much about this virus. We really have no clue where it is. We literally have no clue where it is. And if you listen to everything that's being said, wisdom for me might be, we're just going to stay home because you can literally be walking outside to your car. And I know at first I was very vigilant with the mask with my family, and I still am. But I'm like, Lawrence was outside talking to a neighbor. I'm like, get your mask on.
Right. Did you touch him? Like, what?
You are not coming in this house with those clothes on, and you was just talking to that guy, and I don't know where he's been.
Right.
Bishop said, I'm so holy.
Right. So holy.
That's right, Bishop. I'm not aligning with the devil in anything in my life. But the point in saying that is I had to kind of step back and say, you know what, even though I want to be vigilant and protect my family, faith has to come into play or I will go nowhere. So I guess the question is, can it not be wisdom for parents to say, okay, I'm going to send my kids who are old enough to understand they got to have their mask on and all of that, but I'm going to have enough faith so that grace can stand in the gap because I got to go to work and I know that God is a protector. What do you all think about that?
Yeah, I'm with Teresa. There's faith and then there's also wisdom. But I also know that there are some people who have secluded themselves and isolated themselves so much because they are so fearful. And so, even with the risk of coming in contact with COVID and all that other stuff, I'm still not going, I'm not going to stop living my life and stop figuring out how to move forward. But I'm going to do that with the proper precautions. Someone said, I have faith, but I'm not going to go play in the middle of a busy intersection. I believe God is going, it's just like Teresa said, it's kind of like tempting the Lord. Like, Satan, when he came to Jesus, he said, well, you're the son of God. You command the heavenly host, go and jump off this bridge. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. For what? There's no to prove what. So I think there's measures that we can take to, of course, prove our faith. We still believe in prayer. We still believe in anointing ourselves with oil. We still believe in calling others for prayer when something goes wrong or something happens. And we still believe that the prayer of the righteous will save the sick. We still believe that, but doesn't mean I'm gonna go around licking doorknobs just to get sick to prove that God is a healer. Absolutely not. Doesn't mean I'm going to.
But I think that's comparing apples to oranges, though, because I'm not talking about going out with no masks. I'm not talking about going and hugging everybody. I'm talking about what the precautions say is the best measures are masks and social distancing, right? So the question becomes, there are classrooms, like I know in my sister's case, the classroom that her son would have been in is a much smaller classroom. They would have been able to spread out much more and they would have been able to control mask wearing. So is it lack of wisdom for her to send her child knowing that there are social distancing and there are masks in place, that's not the same thing as licking somebody who's sick. It's not, to me,
Right.
It's not the same. But then too, you have that problem is that you can't always control kids. That's our whole, crux of the problem with like the kids getting infected and all that stuff. And, because you can't really control what kids do. And then sometimes kids are just so mischievous and just, you never know what they're going to get into. So I would say, for like younger kids, there has to be some way that we can, provide a solution that will watch them properly, but, just not tempt fate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'll say this regarding that, because we have faith, and somebody said we are using our faith every time we go out. And even when I go out with my mask on, I still have faith in them. I'm thinking and praying God is going to keep me protected. But I think it's a bigger situation relative to your faith, because you can have faith in God and believe that he's going to prevent you from contracting the virus. And then God, in his awesomeness and omniscient power, can say, I'm going to pull this back and let Teresa get it just so I can have my glory. And then you be out there talking about, I did it. God, I trusted you. And God is like, I'm glad you trusted me, because I needed you out there shouting to the mountains that God's going to cover me. And then when I pull the cover off of you, I still want to see if you're going to serve me. So I'm serving the Lord in quietness. The Lord don't have to humble me. I can humble myself. Like, how your mom can look at you and you be like, I'm being quiet. I'm going to go sit down right now. The Lord can look at me like, you want to be made an example? No, sir. I'm going to sit over here. I'm going to stay in the house with my mask on. I'm not going outside. No, Jesus. He don't have to get me. God don't have to teach no lesson. He ain't going to make me out of no testimony for the United States.
Well, Sharina makes a good point, because the thing is, the question of faith comes in because we know people of faith who have passed away. And it doesn't mean that they did not have faith. It does not mean that God is not a healer. It just means that God is sovereign and he knows exactly what he's doing. And this is one of the things that, and this may spark a different conversation, but like, even with the saints, like, we as Christians and believers, it's our job to prepare people to die. So this whole, clinging on to life for everything, Jesus said, you hold on to your life, you're going to lose it. So it's our job actually to teach people how to die properly. So one of the things that I've actually been thinking about when it comes to like my friends that they so stupid, they just won't get saved. I'm like, what is it going to take? You got a virus right here. Like, what are you going to do when you die? That is the biggest thing.
That's big.
While I'm here, I'm not going to allow even this circumstance or situation to stop me from living the life that God gave me to the fullest. That is not, I don't know.
But to me, I think that's what makes the complication. And again, I'm arguing all sides. That
I was going to ask you, what's your posture? Like, where do you stand with it?
I agree. I mean, I've argued what Sharina put up before, that sometimes I think we can be arrogant in our faith and talk about it in a way as if faith makes God do something, when in fact, to what you just said, faith is the belief that God is sovereign and that whatever he decides to do, it is well, because he is sovereign and he's God.
My Lord.
I think we feel like faith is making God's hand move in the way that we want it to. Now, I do believe that as people of God, we can influence him, look at Abraham in the Bible, look at other people who have cried out to him, Elijah, others. But I do believe ultimately my faith says, God, you're big enough to know what you're doing. And I think it's complicated because there are arguments on either side. As I said, my girlfriend who is sending her children to school, what she said to me was, I believe when they go to their elementary school, that's going to be the one elementary school where there are no COVID cases because my kids are there. And I love pre-pandemic, that would make somebody shout. Post-pandemic, I feel like fear has crept in and people don't want to say it because if something does happen, then maybe I didn't have faith or I'll be shamed in some way. I think we need to have the same faith we had pre-pandemic because he's the same God, right?
Yeah.
And to the point that you just made, Dana, I do feel like people have stopped their lives because of this coronaphobia.
Yeah,
Which,
yeah.
Mr. Travis
Yeah.
put that. So I think for me it's complicated. I still wouldn't have sent my kids to school, but I also believe that it can be faith if you do send your children to school. I just
Sure.
I don't think anybody should be shamed for the decision that they make. And that's
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
we're doing or talking about. But I feel like we do that in society. It's either this or that, and it's going to be a us versus them, no matter what it is, mask or not, school or not. We're
Yeah.
tired to do that for some reason.
Right. And
Yeah.
look at Sharina's comment. She said, I have faith and still tested positive.
Right.
Like you can, God is sovereign, and he reigns on the just as well as the unjust. And so we never know how he'll move his hand.
Mhm.
But again, I think our faith, the purpose of faith, like the Bible says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. So you have to have a unshakable faith in God to the fault of, or to the point of the 3 Hebrew boys. Like he's able to do it, but if he don't, he's still God. And so I believe God. And so my thing is, so Lord, you know, if this is my lot, this is the way that I'm going, this is the way you're going to take me, please don't let it be like so treacherous or whatever it is, but I'm still in his hands and at his will. But because I have it, or I may be asymptomatic, I don't want to go out and make somebody else sick. Now, my mom stays with my sister and her family. And so while her kids are like out and they're with their friends and they're like, what? I'm like, do not take anything home to granny.
Yeah.
Like while you might be careless, I don't want you to be so, oh, I'm not going to get sick. And then you bring it home to somebody who has no idea that you've been exposed to COVID.
That's
so
true.
I think it's a matter of being prudent and understanding that you can be asymptomatic and nobody knows. And then you can take it to somebody who may have an underlying issue and it's terminable for them. And that's not cool.
That's right. No, I agree with that. And I think about that, Teresa. I was thinking to myself, if my mom were alive, would I feel it differently? Right. If I were around people who
you wouldn't want anybody up there visiting your mom. I know that.
Yeah. Like that might impact the way I think about it. Bishop Travison is talking about vaccine. There's so many things we could talk about this, but he says can't send kids to school until there's a vaccine. Like, would y'all take a vaccine?
Absolutely not.
I'm thinking about that too. So I don't think that I would, because, you know, from what and there's two sides to vaccines for me, because, you know, for like when they tell you to take the flu shot and all that other stuff, they're literally injecting you with the particular virus or whatever. You have that forever. But then I also think about the fact that they've created vaccines for chicken pox and measles and everything else. So if you've gone through the school system, we've all had the measles, we've all had chicken pox and all those things, and they all work. But as far as now, like I wouldn't want to take a vaccine. And even if I think part of the fear comes in because you hear about 4 million cases, right? 4 million people have tested positive, but not all 4 million of those people have passed away. 4 million of them have not. Because here's the thing, once you have a virus, it's in your system for good. So even if I may have contracted it and I was asymptomatic, but I'm now around someone, so that sparked me to go get tested. Now I found out that I actually have it, but there's been there's no consequences to it. So I've created this fear over nothing. You know what I mean? So I think it's just balancing the information. Like Teresa said, I had to turn the news off because I don't want to be overloaded with negative stuff that's going to try to stir up my emotions and cause me to make bad decisions. So am I going to get a vaccine? No. Do I think there should be vaccines? Yes, for those people who want to take them.
And I'll say this is the thing. They've been saying from day one, it takes 18 months for a vaccine. And now they're like, oh, we've rushed and hurried. And now we have one. We're testing it on people. But like, I don't want to be in the test because like you might heal me of COVID and then I had cancer in 6 months. Or you heal me from COVID and now my immune system is shut down. Or like anything can happen because they don't know yet because there's no buffer of time. Like you have to have that one case that you test everything against to see this is the constant, how did everybody else react to it? And we don't have time for that right now. Like you can come up with a vaccine and I'm gonna be like, Jesus up on high, Lord. I'll be calling on Jesus because I'm not doing that. I'm not. But I'll answer your question, Dr. Matisse. So let's vote. Who thinks schools should open? I can't even raise my hand. Let me see.
Put a thumbs down for no.
I'll put a thumbs down for no. Let's do that. Boo. No.
Boo.
I feel bad for parents who have kids and they have to go to work, and it's like, children that need to be watched. That hurts my feelings for them.
We lost Matissa.
Oh, that's because she asked that question. I didn't know I lost her. I'm sure she'll be right back, guys.
Just forward our conversation. She's like, "What y'all do? What did y'all think?"
Right. She'll be right back. And while she's gone, listen, do not send your kids back. No, I'm just kidding.
I know.
I just think it's too dangerous, actually.
I can understand the reason that parents would want to send their kids back to school, though, because it is, if you're not a trained educator, it's hard. Yeah. I remember when my kids started bringing home some homework, I was like, there is nothing I can do to help you.
I can't. Listen, my niece told her kids, you guys are on a 6-month, because this is when they were going back. This was in March. She was like, you are on a 6-month summer break because I cannot help you. I cannot teach any of that. And so
new math, all this.
Right. Like somebody said the kids should, I guess, be taught, but the high school should be at home. I don't know.
You're saying that like older kids would be able to manage this.
Yeah.
If you think about it, like for the older kids with, and when you think about like online learning for college and stuff, it is actually preparation for college to teach them to be more disciplined. Because definitely when you get your college schedule, you're not in school, 6 hours every day. You got a class on Tuesday, that's 2 hours. You got a class on Thursday.
Right.
And then you have all this free time. So maybe this is a good transition for high schoolers to, do virtual education. But like, they're not even my biggest concern. It's like the middle schooler, those preschoolers. But then you have that problem of what do I do with my kids because I have to work. And there are some parents who don't have, the help at home.
Yeah.
To be able to work, because I know I do some teleworking as well, and there's one of my coworkers, she get on my nerve because she just loved to tell us that she got a little 3-year-old in the background. I was like, give that baby some NyQuil.
Oh Lord, so he can go night. Give
that baby some Dimetap. No.
Be knocked out. Oh,
it is very stressful to try to take care of a small child and try to work at the same time. It's really one of those difficult things that needs to be addressed. But we do have.
She's back.
Hey guys, I'm sorry, something happened.
She don't want to participate in the vote. She laughed everybody. Now she out. So how about this, Dr. Matissa? We didn't get not one yes. We had all.
I know everybody's like no.
Everybody was like no, not yet, not one person. And so my sister posted. She was like, as a mother of 2, I'm saying no. So let me ask you this, Raquel: what your children are ages? I can't remember, but I know your baby girl, Chloe, is not old enough to be at home by herself. So do you trust your 2 children while you and your husband are at work to be at home by themselves? And how do you address their, are they going to sit in front of their computer and do their assignment? Like what do you do as a mother, a parent of 2, and you don't want your kids to go back? What's that answer? I don't even know what that is. Mm-hmm. I can't.
Well, what are you doing? Let's ask Matissa. We got Matissa right in the screen. She's right in the heat of the situation. So I know you had to make some transitions in the beginning because your kids were still in school, and now you have this new school year. Mm-hmm. Let's look back at the last few months. Do you feel like they got the same caliber of education in virtual school?
Well, I'll tell you, I think they didn't because the way they structured it wasn't to do a whole bunch of new stuff, but to reinforce what they had already been learning.
Okay.
So I think the short answer is because they had to do something very quickly, they didn't. Wasn't the caliber of education. I think that could be different in the fall, but unfortunately, my household is not the typical household, right?
Sure.
Because I'm an educator, even though I'm not an elementary educator, God knows, but I can make it work.
Right.
But I think that's a really, really good question. And actually, I was going to ask the opposite. So a lot of what we've talked about is the public health part of it, which is important. But
Sure.
what about this financial part of it for parents who have to go to work, right? They don't have the option that I do. I work from home.
Right.
So even though it's an inconvenience for my kids to be here, just in terms of me having to attend to them, it's going to be fine. You know, it's going to be fine. But for a lot of parents, they can't. And a lot of people want to open up the economy because they've not been able to do that. So what do we do with that? And then what about the domestic violence?
Right.
Abuse,
It's increased since
lack
the
of
pandemic.
nutrition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. And a lot of schools were doing the meals for kids. Because like some of them, that was their only solid meal every day. And so now it's like, you know, abuse from just not even domestic abuse from the spouse to each other, but to their children, because like now it's like, oh, mommy's stressed out and, you know, you want to shake somebody or hurt somebody because it's a lot. And I think that, and I know that domestic violence cases has increased, and I didn't even think about it from parents to child, but just couples that aren't being in the house together that much. And so it's just like,
so what's the greater likelihood? Is the greater likelihood that you're going to contract COVID-19, or the greater likelihood that you're going to go without food or get abused at home, right? And I think we're thinking about the public health thing, which is important. And I don't want to minimize it at all, because there are some people who say there are only 1,000 people who died, or however many thousands of people who died. That is a small part of the population. But when you compare the two, I'm not sure we have those statistics yet.
Right.
I don't even know if there's an answer. And like, because the entire world is managing through this, you know, just as we all are, I think that we have to, we're making our own decisions for our household. Like, this is what's going to happen in my household. And I know there's some people who have probably been terminated for work for saying, I'm not going into work. I have children at home. I have to stay home with my kids. And maybe people are losing their jobs, but for all intents and purposes, it seems like, you know, people are companies or, you know, or places of employment are being accommodating because they know nobody has seen this before in our lifetime. Nobody has faced such a pandemic. And so it's like, you know, we really pivot and prosper, but we really have to adjust. Like, so Rocky says she has to adjust her schedule to accommodate her kids. And, but some parents aren't apt to do that, or you're not even a household where you want to leave your kids all day, or if you know they're being abused or anything. This is Pastor Travis already said we need to pray, but not just pray to the Lord protects us. We need to pray to God heals this and heals the land and
heals our
you would do it for me, please. But
that was a good thing.
Could this be part of, you know, God turning the hearts of the fathers to the children? You know, now that you actually gotta sit here and spend time with them, like, it really is going to challenge the way that you parent. Were you relying too much on the schools to do XYZ? And I know, like, some of the larger ministries I've seen, like Elevation Church, Stephen Furtick's church, and Transformation Church, like, they make sure that, like, their communities, they are still like giving out free meals and taking care of that part of it. But then too, like you said, Matisa, we now have to see what we can do to influence people's decisions on how they are dealing with their families, dealing with the stress of now, you know, being with each other more. How are we talking to each other? Are we working through our issues, or are you just my punching bag for my frustration? So we have to be able to provide those outlets for people to handle those problems and handle their families effectively. And
you know,
go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was cutting you off. I was just going to say, you're making me think about so much. You were talking about turning the hearts of the fathers to the children to the fathers. I believe that so much in my spirit, but I also believe that there is a community aspect of this. I feel like we're so good at shaming each other, like I said before, this cancel culture, but there's also a shaming culture and a me versus the, you know, us versus them. But what if this is an opportunity for communities, whether it's churches, neighborhoods, or whatever? Like, if I'm staying home and my next door neighbor has to go to work, I'm not going to have a house full of kids, but I could have 3 or 4. But we've become so individualistic that yes, it is a decision for my household, but how can I help my neighbor? That's
but even now,
principle too.
This entire pandemic has separated us. Like where there was community. Well, I will say this: in my community where I live, you know, people are walking more, and the kids are riding bikes, and you know, they're in there, you know, so it's more engagement that way. But it's like, you know, but don't come within 6 feet of me. And so it's like, you know, hey, great. Like my neighbors speak to me all the time. It's like, hey, you know, but still, I don't want you in my private space. I don't want you, don't talk to me with no mask on. So it's like, and I don't wear a mask when I go out to walk Boomer. And like some people are out walking their dogs and they have masks on. And they're just looking at me like, shame on you without a mask. I'm like, we're outside. The sun is here. It's air. But it's just, you don't know. Like, I think this is the time for families to come together. Like, like if I have family here, it's like, okay, let's rotate who's going to take care of kids. And Pastor Travis said he'd take his daughters to work with him if he had to. He's not leaving them at home. And so I think that some bosses are going to have to give and say, it's going to bring your child to work day. And then it would be good for those places where people have to go back. If they had like a break room where the kids could go and sit at a computer and, you know, do their homework but like you said, Ms. He said they didn't have the strict regimen of a curriculum, but it was really just trying to keep them up to date and abreast of their education, I guess.
Yeah. And I do fear
concerns of some of the people posting is like, well, what kind of education are they going to get? Even though, okay, so over these last few months, it was a last minute scramble. Now that we have a chance to, you know, prepare for it a little bit, are the kids going to be behind? Did some kids just get passed through to the next grade because it was a last minute thing and they still can't read? They don't know 2 + 2 is 4 or whatever. So I think it is going to force parents to be more diligent in making sure that their children are getting a proper education.
Yeah. But you know what?
But let me tell you this, y'all, and I don't know if she's still on here. Is Jennifer Black on? If you're on, Jen, just put something in the comments. She is in Sumter, South Carolina, and she put up a post the other day to me that was staggering, and I want her to put up the numbers. But I think she said that there was like 3,000, or that might even be low, of students who had been unaccounted for in the spring. So kids that
like, what do you mean?
Like,
well, because you know, every day the teachers take attendance, and if they don't log in, so these are kids who are at home, but they're unaccounted for. So to your point, Dana, I agree with you 100,000%. This is such an opportunity for parents. I mean, I feel like I know my kids better because we've been chained together for 5 months. But there are parents, and this is sad to say, and this is not shaming, because parenting is difficult and people are dealing with all kinds of issues. Parents who are not involved in their kids' lives at all.
Yeah.
Even elementary, middle school kids. So what are we doing for those kids that the school system became the catch-all for? Right?
Well, you know what? I was going to say that because like I sit on the board at a K-8 school, and like we always look at our scores, testing scores and things like that. And there are a few kids where, you know, the school has identified them that they don't have any assistance at home. Like they're essentially raising themselves. So you take that kid out of a place where they're getting what they need, and then they go home to a parent who's been absent already anyway. And then, you know, not that they're even abusing them physically, but it's like, go in your room, shut the door, turn the TV on, or put in a movie, and they're not, you know, gearing them. They're not, because you raise your kid at home, you educate them in the schools, but they need to be reared by their parents. And so for those homes where the kids aren't getting that on a regular basis, then to be left on their own.
Listen, I remember when my kids, in the last school that they were in, my kids weren't getting homework. And I went to the schools. I was like, what is going on? That the kids they had homework, but it wasn't due. They didn't have to turn it in. And I'm like, who assigns homework and it doesn't have to be turned in? And they said, well, some of our kids, their parents won't do it with them at home. So instead of making them feel bad because they're not able to turn their homework in, we assign it. And for those who want to turn it in, they can. But the most of the grade is for what they do in the classroom. And I was like, where am I?
Right, like that. What kind of school? I wish I went to that school.
Now, of course, our kids definitely had homework that they had to turn in, but they would be like, well, this person doesn't have to turn it in. And I'm like,
it's not mandatory.
Right. So I'm just saying that to say, imagine now, people having to log into computers and stuff. It's just not happening for everyone.
Yeah. And then we even in my school district, we supplied them with the laptops so they can, like a notebook, so they can log in. But I don't think we had only our, you have your identified trouble students, and I think those were the only ones who really probably didn't fare well. And everybody else for that last part of the school year for 2020, they did well. Like we were shockingly surprised as a board that our kids, and again, I don't know if their curriculum changed, but they were required to log in. So we still paid our teachers because they had to log on with them and still account for their work, and they still had to have it turned in. And so the only part where they had to partner with the parents is we paid for some to have Wi-Fi connection, and we paid for some to have, or we donated their notebooks, but they had to have a scheduled set time. And this is when everybody was off work, where they logged in, and somebody said it in our comments, they had to log in. And then the teacher had to see them. Like it wasn't like you're logging in watching the presentation. They had one-on-one interaction. Like Dana teaches Sunday school to the kids. Like, I need to see you. I need you to talk to me. Like, you could pull a little bit more out of them. And so, but there are schools that aren't practicing that.
Wow.
Right.
Dana, what were you?
And that's it. I was thinking, in this day and age, even where like the most impoverished kids have a cell phone, but do they all have, the laptops and the tools that they need? Do they all have stable internet connection? And especially since everybody's at home and everybody's using internet, I know half the time we can't get our connection together, because everybody's, using the interweb right now. So do they even have everything that they need to get this virtual education that we're so advocating for?
Now, this is another conversation that we probably shouldn't have. So 2 things. Bishop Travis asked, will basically truancy laws be in place? I think that's a great question. And I think people are probably finagling with that right now to try to figure it out. But I will tell you, truancy issues run rampant across all schools anyway, because you have, people trying to enforce it. It's difficult to enforce. But it's interesting because as we're talking about this, all that this reminds me of, if you're churchy, right? You grew up in the church. All we've been told is all of these signs are leading to a cashless society and dependence upon the internet and chips and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to get too deep because our
Christian moms be like, this would be a time where Gabby would say, "Oh my God, Christian moms be like." I was like, that's right. Christian moms are right. That great day is approaching.
But you know what? It's crazy. It's crazy. Maybe we'll have that conversation. But as these things happen, it does blow your mind when you think about what people have said in terms of what the world will be like. So I'll get off of that so we don't have to get on that. But I love this comment that's up here. I saw a post, President Dictator, what's going to cut? Yeah. So Trump is saying that they're going to cut public funding for public schools. I'm not sure that he's going to be able to do that.
Yeah, he can't.
From everything that I've read.
Yeah.
Because there's a certain amount of money that's earmarked for schools that he does not have the executive power.
Right. Lottery money is tied to the schools. Like he can't. And he'll try to do anything he can. Whether it's unlawful or not. Like he's just oh my God. Are we done with his term isn't over yet? Like, are y'all voting? Like, can we please vote? It's not even close. Like, come on now, we got 90 days. Let's vote. Get out and vote.
It's interesting because I've heard our Governor Kemp, talk about just the connection between the schools and the financial, and that he's trying to keep both going at the same time. Some people would argue that, and I've heard that argument. I don't know. So we are wrapping up now. I guess the final question, or just giving you all the final word. How would you advise people, or what would you say to people grappling with these decisions right now?
I would just tell people to stay prayerful, stay take the necessary precautions. Do what's best for your family. Don't let people pressure you one way or the other. Don't let people pressure you into sending your kids. Don't let people pressure you into keeping your kids at home if it's something that you're not comfortable with. But I definitely would caution parents to just, be a little bit more engaged with their children's lives and their education. This is definitely one of those times to reconnect, reset, readjust. It's a major shaking to the foundation of our families, because it has literally changed every aspect of our lives. So this education conversation is just another portion where it helps you evaluate yourself as a parent and how well connected you are to the things that are going on in your children's lives. So just be prayerful, be cautious, and do what's right for your family.
That's good.
I love that. And I would just add to that, just to exercise wisdom for every situation. Like there is no cookie cutter solution for everyone. So I do believe that we need to use wisdom. What your child is susceptible to, whether or not your child has underlying health issues. Like, so for where some, you might say, oh, I'm going to let my kids do this or go to the community for learning. But then, your family, your children. And with that, I think that we, of course, pray and ask God for direction and guidance, which I trust that he will truly give. But be prudent for yourself, like almost the offense and defense, like where people aren't being careful around you, you be careful for them too. So don't just, somebody said earlier, don't just pray that God covers you, but I want him to cover me, the people that are around me, like just order my steps and protect us through all of this. And I know God is going to get the glory. Like none of this came to God by a surprise. He wasn't like, oh man, that COVID-19.
Right.
Like, he knew every person that was going to lose their life. He knew everything that was going to happen. He knew every little step that is happening now. God already foresaw this. If that foresaw it. Yeah. And so I think that we trust and rely on him because he's God, he's sovereign, and I serve a sovereign God. So I can't be worried about tomorrow because I know who holds tomorrow.
Right.
So
she got churchy at the end, didn't she?
I trust in God. If I can sing a song, I'd sing though.
We've been out of church too long. Teresa
I know.
Oh my goodness. Somebody.
I cannot wait to get the testimony service.
I would just add to that, be a good neighbor. Be a good neighbor. This thing is tough for all of us, especially for parents making the decision. When I tell you I was in sackcloth and ashes, I really was like, God, you got to give me the right thing to do. And I still didn't know if it was the right thing. I just did the best I could in making the decision. So I would say help the people who need the help. Let's be the community. Let's be the beloved community that God calls for us to be. And that's not being super spiritual. That's being a good kingdom neighbor. And just make sure that we're talking through this, as you all said, praying through it. And if we take all of these things into consideration and are led by God, we will have all things new. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Thanks for you, Joya.